Back from my trip in the Philippines. For those of you guys that have been following me, I was just in the mountains for like the last 3 days at a ayahuasca ceremony retreat, and just wanted to kind of get some of my thoughts out. I was there for 3 days, and I had a lot of kind of different reflections on that experience, and kind of wanted to go over a few of the things that, at least the ceremony, for a lot of people have kind of reached out to me. They're kind of interested in this type of experience, as it's a little bit new for some people. Like I originally wanted to go to Peru about 5 or 6 years ago. I wanted to go there and do ayahuasca, because that's kind of like the epicenter of where this plant medicine really kind of originated from. And there's a lot of retreats and ceremonies in the Iquitos area. Now, Iquitos is a really interesting city. It's the largest city in the world that's inaccessible by road. The only way to get there is by boat or by plane, right in the heart of the Amazon. And that was a place I really wanted to go. I think the big deterrent for me was the plane ticket getting there. And so I wasn't able to go. I really wanted to experience doing ayahuasca for a long time. And I had the opportunity to do it in California last year, and that was a really eye-opening experience. Like I did it in a ceremony with it was a very large group. There was about 60 or 70 people there, and for my first time doing ayahuasca, I know that it was it's done in shots. So it's basically, for those of you guys that are a little bit unfamiliar with it, it's a brew that's made from bark of a tree that has the kind of it kind of has this branding as the vine of the dead, and it's very high in DMT. And when you boil the bark along with some other leaves and a few other ingredients, it creates this brew, and it's very strong and very I don't know if psychoactive is the right. Can I use this, because I need this for this? Yeah, thank you. So like that was something that it's kind of centered in the Amazon. And so in California, they actually, it looks like they brought in like a large jug, and they brought it in from Peru, is what I'm assuming. And it was done in shots given out to the group. Now, most people in the group were taking roughly about 3 or 4 shots. It was kind of spaced out in time, maybe half an hour to an hour between each of the shots. There was a lot of women in the group that took the first shot, like they were really starting to feel the effects. I mean, it was actually very intense, because the amount of people that were there. California's kind of crazy. Like there's a lot of kind of very eccentric people in California, and so there's a lot of yelling and screaming. Like there were some people that really had some demons that they were unleashing, and so that was kind of just kind of an eye-opening experience, because for me, like it took a long time for it to hit me, and I took more shots than anyone else in the group. Like I'm a pretty big guy, so I needed to have a little bit more. And I was kind of working with the head shaman there, and so I ended up taking about 5 shots, and it really didn't starting to hit me. It kind of started hitting me in the 4th shot, and by the time I took the 5th shot, I was really starting to feel the effects. And it was kind of this explosive feeling. It really kind of starts with a little bit of like almost like a headache or kind of like a nausea that kind of starts in the head, and then it comes down and it kind of starts to, I guess, interact with like your root chakra or some of your like sexual energy that you have, and it really kind of starts to kind of build up through there and come up through like your different chakras is one way of kind of trying to describe the experience. It really kind of starts to come up through the stomach. Typically there's purging. Like for me, like I was able to hold the ayahuasca in my stomach for quite a while before ultimately purging. And usually when you purge, like you really start to kind of have some very powerful experiences, and that's kind of when you typically feel the effects of like your third eye opening. And that was the experience that I had in my first experience. I had a very powerful opening of my third eye, and some of the revelations and just like the thoughts that were going through my head, honestly, were a little frightening, especially when I started. When it really started to kind of build, I was reaching like the peak of my trip. It was a very very powerful experience, and I think one of the first things that I was looking for was a little bit of like security with some of the people within the group. And there was a guy there who I ended up making good friends with. He's like he's one of the bigger guys there. He's like an MMA fighter, and so he has a little bit of just kind of being around him and being around that energy really helped me, and he was able to really kind of calm me down. And I was also there with a few women that were also kind of like helpful in that experience. But it was an opportunity to really kind of explore some of the depths of my mind and my consciousness in ways I'd never really been able to do that before. So I was anticipating a similar experience coming here into the Philippines, and this was a much smaller group. There was only 7 people, and the first day we started with some psilocybin mushrooms. These particular mushrooms, like when I took them, I started to have some really powerful visualizations when I closed my eyes, and we would, you have like a bowl of mushrooms, and all of the men took mushrooms. The women started with their first shot of ayahuasca, and then after that I started doing shots of ayahuasca. Now, when I in this first ceremony, I did like 7 shots. I did a lot of ayahuasca, and I didn't purge. Like I didn't bring up some of that into like I wasn't able to like puke, and that's pretty common. Like the people around me were puking, and they were having a pretty powerful experience, but it wasn't the same where there was kind of like yelling and screaming. It was a little bit more of a calm collection of people that were there. It was about half Filipino, half Westerners. There were some guys. There was a guy from Germany. There was a guy from Singapore. There was a guy from Poland. Some people, it was their first time. A few others had some experience, doing this. But I was actually really surprised by the amount of ayahuasca that I was able to actually hold in my stomach and not really have some of the same effects that I had from my last trip. And it wasn't really the fault of the medicine, because the people around me were having very powerful experiences. But it was a little bit disappointing for me at first. Like the mushrooms, I had a really kind of vivid experience, very kind of colorful, very like personal, like imaginatory, just kind of like geometric visualizations that were kind of like going through my head. It was really quite profound. But once the effects of the mushrooms started to wear off a little bit, I started kind of building up the amount of ayahuasca that I was taking during that session, and I kind of went in all through the night, and that was something where I didn't really have the same type of explosive experience. And so the next day, we kind of had a little bit of different. We had a different kind of flow that we were kind of going into. So there's Rapé, and so I've done Rapé a few times. I've done it twice, and what it is, it's like almost like a tobacco snuff that's like blown or it's shooted into your nose, into your nostrils. So one on each side. And typically when I've done it before, it was kind of like a smaller amount, but this one like was a very large amount, and it was kind of blown very forcefully, kind of into my nasal, and I was really nauseated by that experience. It made me sick. I ended up doing. I really started kind of I ended up puking. Or purging is kind of like, I guess the more better way of kind of describing it. And I became like very weak, and it was something where I needed some time to like really kind of calm myself down. And I spent several hours, like I was having cold sweats. It just really kind of like put my body through the loop. And so like from that point on, I was pretty nauseated. And we started with some of the ayahuasca. So I started with a very large cup, because one of the things I was kind of talking with the shaman about was that I wanted to take a much larger dose initially in the beginning, and kind of like, taper down my dosage kind of towards the end of my trip. And so I started with a very large dose of ayahuasca. It was almost like 3 shots in one. It was just a very large cup. And so I took basically, about 2 shots, and I just couldn't hold it in my stomach. And so I had to pretty much purge. And I was able to kind of like take like that last shot that was kind of left in that cup, and I was able to hold that down in my stomach, but my body was really weak, and it was gonna be really difficult for me to hold some of these things in my stomach. And so I ended up actually switching to some psilocybin mushrooms. I had a bowl of them, and I started kind of eating those, and again, like I started having nausea again, and as soon as I ate the entire bowl, about 2 or 3 minutes later, I purged the whole thing back up. So I wasn't able to hold that down. And they have like an ayahuasca wine. I need to do a little bit more research on that. It was kind of an interesting wine, but that was actually a little bit calmer on my stomach. And I was able to take a few shots of that, but I only had like maybe. I think I was only able to take like 3 shots, and I just was not ready to kind of have that kind of same experience. So that was 2 days in a row where I'd taken quite a bit of ayahuasca, and I just was not able to kind of reach the same place that I was at when I had done it originally in California, which was actually very frustrating for me, because I wasn't able to really kind of have some of the same kind of like insights and experiences that you can gain from some of these trips. And so, I was pretty much ready to come back, just kind of frustrated, saying I didn't know if it was, pretty much what ended up happening is I think that, the ayahuasca pretty much just kind of rejected me. I don't know how else to kind of describe it. Like I was able to hold a lot of it in, and I was able to kind of purge, like basically by kind of cleaning out my system. Like I was shitting a lot. There's like, I really was kind of cleaning myself out. So at this point I was almost like fasting. Like I really had no food. I had a very, very empty stomach, and which is, it's a little bit difficult for me because I'm a big guy and I have food. But it was kind of important for me not to drink a whole lot of water, not to have a whole lot in my stomach, but to actually have a little bit more of a just kind of empty myself out before I was able to kind of do some of these things again. But the Rapé really just messed me up, and it was and that in combination with the ayahuasca, it's just it just became a little bit frustrated. I've heard some people they'll have a very powerful experience with ayahuasca, and they'll come back and they'll do a little bit more. And it was like they won't have the same experience. Like they'll essentially like not they're not able to reach the same place. So it's not uncommon for that to happen. And so the shaman that I was working with, I was kind of explaining some of my experiences, some of the things, and it was actually echoed by a few other people that were in the group. They were kind of having some of the similar struggles, kind of, reaching that place with the ayahuasca. Women, on the other hand, were, they had some very like profound revelations of kind of like their ambition in life and how they are wanting to kind of forward. So that was really insightful to kind of hear some of those perspectives as opposed to like the male perspective of some of the guys in the group. So the third day started a little bit earlier, and this time started with some of the ayahuasca wine. The ayahuasca wine was it kind of has like lemon in it, and it's a little bit like easier on the stomach. And so I took a few shots. I think I had about like 3 shots total. But really, like I wasn't really kind of feeling the same effects. I kind of sat with that for several hours. So it was like 3 days in a row where I just didn't really feel some of the effects of the ayahuasca. And it wasn't, again, it wasn't like the fault of the medicine. It was really just, just for whatever reason, it just wasn't the right time for me. And then I started with these mushrooms again. Like, I don't know if these were the same mushrooms, but they basically said that they were these Panaeolus Cyanescens, and so I put this in the description below if you guys are interested. This is the mushrooms that I had taken. Apparently they're also named like the Hawaiian. They're very I guess they have quite a bit of a history on the Hawaiian Islands, but they grow very, very well in the Philippines. And these ones are actually very fresh. You said this is a really good time for the mushrooms. So I ended up eating 2 bowls full of these mushrooms. I don't know how much that is, but these mushrooms are about 5 times more powerful than your typical psilocybin mushrooms, which I don't have a whole lot of experience with, but there was they're like psilocybin mushrooms have probably one of the biggest they're one of the most, they have the biggest collection of psilocybin mushrooms in the Northwest, where I'm from in Seattle. I never really had a chance to really kind of explore some of those groups, but I really wanted to. And I pretty much this was kind of like my first time or first experience with these mushrooms. My stomach was a little bit more prepared. Like, I was pretty much cleaned out at this point. Like, I hadn't really eaten anything. I had water, and then having those mushrooms, it took a little while. And once I started to kind of like, once they really started to kick in, that was a pretty incredible experience. And it was much different than like the kind of this powerful experience that I had with ayahuasca, of kind of opening my third eye. Like this one, I had like, it still kind of interacts with like the pineal gland, the DMT in the brain, but this one was it kind of affected me in a little bit of a different way. Like, I feel like the ayahuasca, that experience that I had before, was a little bit more like intuitive, personal, whereas like with the mushrooms, I felt like it was kind of more like universal or like galactic in a way. For those of you guys like that aren't as familiar with mushrooms, like I had heard this somewhere, that the only like organic matter that is able to survive the vacuum of space are mushrooms. And so there's a lot of theories behind mushroom spores being, kind of another connection to perhaps alien life in the universe. If they basically coming through the vacuum of space and coming into different planets. There's a lot of really interesting theories behind that, and you guys, if you guys have some insights, I'm interested to kind of hear about that. But I was having some really interesting conversations before, where we were kind of exploring some of those ideas and philosophies, and I was able to really have some kind of different like thoughts and processes going through my head. Now, obviously, like I'm very into cryptocurrency, and so this has been very much on the forefront of my mind. I'm thinking a lot about like some of the YouTubers that I watch, some of the people that I follow, and even kind of going deeper into some of the earlier foundations and histories of cryptocurrency. Like one of the things, I left a link in the description below. Like for whatever reason, like I started thinking about Ross Ulbricht. For those of you guys that aren't as familiar, he was basically the guy that was the was known for creating Silk Road, which operated from 2011 to 2013. There's some interesting history on this. He's currently serving 2 life, the possibility of parole for basically a non-violent crime. I mean, he did set up this network that was operating with Bitcoin and also privately through the Tor browser, and the FBI agents or whatnot that ended up prosecuting him went to some extremes. They actually were doing some things that were not necessarily like your normal standard procedures with and get investigative work, and there's actually some challenged in the court. It seems like a very harsh sentence for someone that was really I don't know. It's just, and I'm not really sure why some of the stuff is coming up, but like some of the the security elements of it, kind of like I in my first experience with doing ayahuasca, I think one of the things that I came to realize is that I didn't want to live in the U.S. And part of that was because of just the environment that is you're currently seeing in the U.S., where the U.S. is really it's like a war machine that also is driven by the judicial or prison system, at least in my perspective. The amount of money that is spent, kind of policing the world, with the largest, like the military is bigger than pretty much every single other military country's military in the world combined. I'm just really, I kind of have some more like conspiracy theory viewpoints with some of that, and I had some run-ins with the legal system that I just really kind of lost faith in the U.S. legal system in a lot of different ways. So it was like something that I just didn't feel safe in the U.S. I didn't feel like I could express my First Amendment rights of speaking my mind and just talking about the things that I really want to talk about without fear of persecution or getting sued or getting served papers or probed by the FBI or the SEC. You're seeing that with some of the people that were involved with the platform BitConnect that I was involved with, which we're still trying to kind of get some answers from. And right before I did my trip in the Philippines, I came to find out some of the news with John Bigatton's wife. So I know this story has been kind of circulating a little bit behind the scenes, but I left one of the articles in the description below. So this is now the title is police are suspecting murder. Now they're suspecting murder. It's not necessarily known whether or not that is going to be the cause of this whole situation. But basically, John Bigatton's wife vanished about 3 months ago. March 15th. It was, she was. They found her car next to a cliff. They didn't that have some connections in Australia, so I'm trying to get some more information on that story. When I first found out about it, they were also like taken by surprise. They didn't know, a whole lot about this. I'm friends with John. I used to be like, connected with him on Facebook, WhatsApp, Telegram. He's a little bit underground, and he's not, he's taking his lawyer's advice and basically staying, kind of out of the spotlight, because he was severely affected by this situation as well. So, they're still not really sure, what happened. I'm trying to get, some more details, and I have some people that are connected to John's wife, and so I'm hoping that I get some more information and kind of present that to you. But it's a little bit scary that the legal situation with BitConnect. Like, I know that I was reading some reports that Glenn is currently kind of dealing with some legal issues in the U.S. He's filing paperwork, basically kind of trying to do some of the necessary things to protect himself in terms of, like, the regulators and whatnot, and how they're going about, like, trying to the of what was happening. There's a lot of people that were hurt in this platform, and it seems to be like somebody, like they really want to put somebody away for a long time. Very similar to almost like something like what we saw with like the this Ulbricht case, where the guy's serving 2 consecutive life sentences on basically like trafficking drugs or whatnot, and so like the other charges were like money laundering. There were some other charges in there that were pretty much dismissed. Like, typically what happens in the legal system is they start with like the highest crimes that they can possibly conjure up, in terms of like the way they are that it was kind of a very revolutionary type of platform. There wasn't a whole lot of information that was given, but the reasonings that were given to us as to why that was happening was things, and part of that is just kind of the security element behind cryptocurrency, and that was something that was stressed a lot of different ways. They were towards the end, they were really starting to kind of get into staking. Like, they were trying to, like, kind of getting away from mining of the coin. It's kind of like the new kind of evolution that we're seeing with cryptocurrencies, getting away from an energy-intensive process of doing mining operations, and kind of moving into more of like a digital, like technologically driven staking process. So yeah, like these, like, it was really like some of the ideas and the thoughts that I was having. I mean, I think one of the biggest things the biggest revelations that I had, especially with mushrooms on the 3rd day, was having the ability to express my thoughts freely and not be censored. Like, there's been a lot of people that have reached out to me like, why aren't you in Steam? And I think, like, I tried getting into Steam twice. Like, I initially got in 2015, and I got in again in 2017. Both times I got censored, and I'm very kind of anti-censorship, and like, I kind of understand, some of the reasoning behind the censorship that they had, and why they were doing that, but I still didn't really feel like I didn't feel like a platform like that should be doing that type of kind of automated censorship, on something that was still, very new. And so, but I wanted to get into something where I can kind of get into doing video or expressing my thoughts, and getting kind of developing my train of thought, like the blockchain, and having that immutable, so you have it essentially forever. And also kind of looking into like the legal, like, justice aspect of going to be interpreted by, federal regulatory agencies because they're really out to make examples of people. And that's kind of been reiterated by some of the things that I've seen with some of the legal proceedings moving with next, not only in the U.S. but also like you're seeing in India, you're seeing in Australia, you're seeing it in Indonesia, Vietnam to a lesser extent, but a lot of the people that were initially involved with BitConnect are scared. They don't feel like they did anything wrong. At the same time, like people, these regulators and these mental bodies are really out to examples of people in the case, and so it's still I'm still all right. Internet cut out there for a sec. Sorry about that. But I see someone talking about the Evolution 1 project, where I kind of recently got into, and some of the people are warning about that because of some of the stances that Dan and other people in that community have taken. And they're very kind of like anti-government, anti-regulatory, and that might be setting them up to be, to basically be like combative with federal authorities in terms of like how they want to regulate this. And like they just recently kind of ruled on the securities and how that is impacting like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Kind of like they're not really like giving any indication on how they're going to talk or regulate other cryptocurrencies. They're basically just kind of giving a broad definition of kind of how they determine securities, and if they feel that a particular cryptocurrency platform and it could be subject to regulation. However, as we all know, like cryptocurrency is a ridiculous phenomenon, and I just personally have left because I don't feel being able to just speak my mind about things in the crypto space. And the same, I'm also looking for a way so I can still express some of my and the things that I want to push. Life is fleeting. It's now that was kind of another thing that came up. I only have so much time to. I really try to focus on kind of expressing myself and have this developed and worked through with maybe a different platform. Perhaps we're going to see another platform that may be a competitor to Steam, to YouTube, to these other platforms and whatnot. So I know I've been rambling. I'm going to check in with the chat a little bit, but any Bitcoin in July? I want to spend time in. I was having strong kind of thoughts around that, like what I really want to do is I want to do ayahuasca, and there's like an opportunity to do that. Like I really feel like doing these like shaman experiences in different countries, it gives me kind of a perspective and a different experience. Like my experience in the Philippines was very different than my experience in California, and I was given some information about another other services in I'm looking to explore. There's a guy that was doing some services there, and he's group, so I'm very encouraged by that. Maybe want to get into that, but I would love to do ayahuasca in India. DTube takes 15% of your profit. No YouTube D Live. I was kind of reading through the chat here. Yeah. Yeah. Just, some different kind of thoughts. Like, I just, you know, it was a very interesting, like, experience. Like, I've never been in love with like a woman. I can't really say that I've been in a woman, but some of like the deep feelings of like love that I've had have come through these experiences, and so I think that's kind of one of the last things I wanted to express. It really makes me want to explore this area of myself a little bit further. But I just had some really like profound experiences. So I was there with a woman in the Philippines that I've known for a while, and I've been intimate with. Experiences with the mushroom. It was just kind of like this overjoyous feeling of love and connection that I had, and it was really profound. There was all kind of this sense of like self-love, like wanting to really work on my my first experience. Like I had a lot of issues. Maybe I felt like there was a lot of things in my lungs and my heart. That really kind of came out in that first experience. In this experience, that I was a little bit more my gut and maybe my intestines, a little bit, maybe some of my lower. If that's, I think that I'm looking to kind of change up some of the things I'm doing, and I also want to start trying to get into fasting. Like I've been looking at a little bit. It's a little, I love food so much, but I want to get into intermittent fasting, and I want to know my health a little bit more. I've been very good about working out, like I run. But anyways, yeah, I was just kind of talking about kind of the internet maybe is not the greatest in the Philippines. I'm at a pretty decent hotel here, but the internet's not the greatest, I'd say. So, are you going back to the States anytime soon? I'm planning on going back in August, I think, for a little bit. I want to grab a few more of my things in the U.S. and I haven't made any, but I'm thinking that might be what I'm going to end up doing. So we'll see. But all right, guys, that was just I just wanted to at least from an overall experience of dealing with this kind of shamanistic experience, and I'm looking to kind of go deeper with this maybe this time, and perhaps and kind of those insights and kind of get for clarity and some different perspective on some different things that I want to kind of explore and talk. So yeah, I appreciate y'all staying on, and I do video and some things that I'll show you guys. So I took quite a bit of video there. So once I get back, I'm going to try to spend some time and cut it all up and do a little video on and showing you guys kind of that whole experience. But I'll be back in Vietnam. I'm flying out tonight, tomorrow. I'll try to get on tomorrow and more of a crypto update and kind of see where things are. I've been kind of away from my portfolio in a sense, or kind of some of my holdings, and so I want to see about again kind of giving you guys some of my feedback and kind of the platform I'm getting it, and I hope it'll be a lot better. So appreciate y'all staying online.